And I want to welcome you all here. I'm so pleased to be joined by leaders from the fishing community and several of my fellow elected officials, including the great speaker Nancy Pelosi, who is going to be our closer here for this program. But I'm going to get us started by acknowledging that this is not a happy occasion. This dreary weather is pretty fitting for the dark situation that we're all here to talk about. A statewide closure of the California salmon season is terrible news. It's not something any of us want to see, and frankly, it's not the first time we've dealt with fishery closures. Certainly during my 11 years in Congress, and for many of you going back even further, we've seen too many of these events. Obviously, the drought has contributed terrible conditions that helped get us to this unfortunate situation, but there are also water management decisions that have been made that were not in the interests of salmon. And so today we're here to talk about the immediate needs of the fishing community. They're going to need our help, but we're also going to talk about the longer-term need to save our salmon, and to make sure that they don't go extinct on our watch, to make sure that these working waterfronts can continue to support fishing men and women and restaurants and charters and everything else that is part of the fishing economy for generations to come. All right, so right now, folks who make their living on the water and others in the economy who depend on fishing are bracing for some terrible economic impacts. We're going to hear from some of the people that are most directly affected here today, and it's very important that we put a human face on this challenge. So often when we hear about salmon, we hear this narrative about fish versus people. We need to remind everyone that this is people when we talk about salmon. People who make their living on the water. And of course, I represent a lot of the fishing communities and tribes and tribal members who have depended on healthy salmon runs for a long, long time. We are going to try to declare a federal fishing disaster. We're grateful that Governor Newsom and his administration have started that process by requesting a federal disaster declaration. And my colleagues in Congress and I are going to go to work to make sure that Secretary Gina Raimondo quickly follows up with that federal declaration. Now, in years past, some of you know that it has sometimes taken a long time to get that disaster relief to the people who need it. In some cases, it's taken 2 years or more. That's not going to work right now. And you'll hear more from folks who are really, really struggling, because this fishery closure for salmon comes on the heels of other impacts, including a really difficult Dungeness crab season for a lot of these folks. So we can't afford to wait years, and in fact, we've got to bring this disaster relief home in a matter of a few months. That's our challenge. The good news is, in the last Congress, with Speaker Pelosi's leadership, we made some very important legislative changes to the way we do fishery disasters. It should speed things up quite a bit. We also appropriated $300 million that should give us a head start on trying to secure those funds and get them out the door to folks who need it. So that is our two-part challenge, an immediate push to bring federal disaster relief to these communities, but a longer-term push to challenge state and federal leaders to step up and do better for our salmon so that we can continue to catch salmon and support the fishing economy that's so important to coastal California. With that, I'm going to hand off to Sarah Bates, who's going to tell you a little bit more about what this fishery closure means to her and others in these working waterfronts that we represent.
Thank you very much, Congressman Huffman. Good morning. My name is Sarah Bates. Just one correction is that one of the press releases identified me as the ED of PCFFA, and we wholeheartedly support PCFFA, but I am not the executive director, so just so that I don't get misidentified. Thank you. I am a salmon captain here in San Francisco, and one of the people here today whose livelihood is really uncertain due to this salmon disaster once again. Thank you very much for coming out today. and supporting our recreational and commercial salmon fisheries. We really appreciate your support. We wish you were here for a happier occasion. We wish you had salmon or crab to take home with you today, but that's not what we're looking at right now. This is the strangest April I have ever seen. First of all, it's raining. Thank you for tolerating the rain. But normally, the first week of April at Pier 45 is really bustling. You know, recreational season should be open. We should be getting the first reports from the charter boats and from the private skiffs that are fishing in our local waters and bringing fish home to feed their families. We should be checking our anchor winches and putting on new hydraulic hoses. We should be tying leaders. We should be checking the weather. We should be putting fuel and ice on the boats so that we can go out for our first trip south to Monterey Bay or out to the Farallon Islands. We should be bringing salmon back to San Francisco for your restaurants and your tables. And instead, we have a complete closure of all recreational and commercial salmon fishing in the entire state of California. That's ocean fishing and that's in-river fishing. We are seeing the lowest returns that we've ever seen on both the Klamath and the Sacramento rivers this year. And these salmon are resilient. They have been swimming underneath this bridge before there was a bridge. They've been swimming through the Golden Gate for millions of years. They've been coming up these rivers for about as long as human beings have been walking on two legs. They have survived landslides, they have survived huge droughts, they have survived temperature changes, they have survived changing ocean conditions, they've survived rivers that have changed course. What they can't survive is some of the water management policies that are putting their breeding habitat at risk. And we very much appreciate all of the attention that everyone is giving to this disaster. The Department of Fish and Wildlife has been working very closely with our elected representatives and our governor, and last night they sent a memo requesting a declaration of a fishery disaster, and we very much appreciate that. We need that. Fishermen have an extremely broad set of skills, and we are pretty good at thinking quickly in an emergency. Things happen at sea, and we can work with that. But this one is bigger than that. We need help. We need help from our elected representatives to get federal disaster. We need help from the Department of Fish and Wildlife to work for hatchery reforms. We need help from the Bureau of Reclamation. We need help from the Department of Water Resources. We need your help. And so we really, really appreciate you guys coming out today and giving this the attention that we need. We really look forward to working with our elected representatives and including our governor and all of our state and federal agencies so that we can go fishing again, because I think we all deserve salmon at our tables. We deserve salmon in our restaurants. This is a public resource and we deserve access to it. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Sarah.
Oh, sorry. Next up is Secretary Wade Crowfoot. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sarah, for giving voice to this crisis. I'm Wade Crowfoot, and I lead our California Natural Resources Agency at the state government level. This is obviously a tough day for the men and women that fish out of this harbor, for the families and communities up and down the coast whose livelihoods are now impacted without a salmon season, for the tribes that depend on salmon for both sustenance and their cultural life ways. And I'll say for all Californians who pride ourselves on living in a state with a thriving natural resource. I have to say, first and foremost, I'm here on behalf of Governor Newsom, and I'll say all of our state government leaders in Sacramento, to support our congressional delegation's leadership in getting this disaster assistance money quickly. We know, simply put, it can't take years to help out families that are being impacted by this disaster. And thanks to Congressman Huffman, we now have a streamlined process. I'm very confident in the Biden-Harris administration, based on their proactivity, the urgency they bring to addressing all of our challenges, that we are going to work more quickly than ever in partnership with the federal government to get important disaster relief to these folks. But we know that's not what our fishing community wants and needs. They want to be out there fishing. It's been a brutal drought. In October, we ended our driest 3-year period in California history. 8 of the last 10 years have been exceptional drought years. That's impacted our fisheries, that's impacted our birds and our waterfowl. Up until just several weeks ago, over 6 million Californians were on water rationing. And today we have rurally isolated communities that literally ran out of water when their shallow wells went dry. So this weather whiplash we're experiencing that 10-year on and off drought, and now this crazy winter we're having is unprecedented. But I want to say, from our perspective, we're not powerless to that. There's a lot we can do and need to do. And when it comes to salmon fishery, while we're making progress, there's a lot more we need to do. We need to improve conditions in the rivers, improve flows into the rivers, keep temperatures cool so that salmon can thrive. We need to reconnect salmon to their spawning habitat. We've lost over 90% of spawning habitat in California over the last century as we put in dams. We're working on removing a lot of those barriers, including Klamath River dams. We need to let the rivers roam in winters like this and get salmon onto the floodplain. And we need to modernize our hatcheries. So there's a lot that we can do and we need to do. And I'll say, as it happens, the sovereign Yurok government, our most populous tribe in California, yesterday received almost $5 million from our California Department of Fish and Wildlife to construct or restore habitat along the Trinity River, which is going to be really helpful to salmon. And it's projects like that that give me hope that we're going to persist through this, we're going to get the resources to the impacted fishing community, and we're going to create a more prosperous future for salmon. But make no mistake, the priority 1A right now is to get disaster assistance to those who need it. To give voice to the perspective of the fishing industry, I'm pleased to now introduce John McManus, who helps to lead the Golden Gate Salmon Association.
Except it's the Golden State Salmon Association. We changed the name a little while ago. I'm John McManus. I'm the Senior Policy Director for the Golden State Salmon Association. Very grateful to our federal friends for putting on this press conference today and for the actions they're taking to get disaster relief money to those in the fishing community who are looking at no income this year. There's a lot of fear and panic all up and down the coast with families trying to figure out how they're going to pay the bills this year because there's no salmon. We've got tens of thousands of people in California that rely on salmon to make a living. Would somebody cue this crow to be quiet? Yeah. Anyway, this part's not a laughing matter. We've got a lot of fear and concern, and rightfully so. People are wondering how they're going to pay the bills this year. So I'm heartened actually to hear the report from Congressman Huffman that working with Speaker Pelosi, there's some reason to believe we might see this disaster relief get to the people that it needs rapidly. That's going to be critical because most people I know in the salmon industry don't have a year or two worth of buffer cash in the bank to get through a year with no income. So I guess the only other thing I want to say is I'm asked by members and constituents and people in the salmon industry why we're at this place right now where we have no salmon when we see over the last 3 years we've had 300,000 acres of new almond trees go into the ground, and they're all competing for the water that, well, they're not all competing. Some are competing for the water that salmon need in this state. I will stop there, and I want to introduce my good friend and colleague, Larry Collins.
My name is Larry Collins. I'd like to thank the Congressman and everybody that's trying to get this disaster money to us quickly. What am I going to do this summer? You know, what's the buyers going to buy? You know, it's really rough. My wife and I started fishing in 1984 with a little Monterey out of here, and at that point there was 4,700 salmon permits in California. Now there's about 400 guys that fish salmon commercially left. So we've lost 90% of our industry. When we started fishing, there was only 16 million people in California, and there was only 18,000 almond trees down the valley. Now there's 40 million people and probably 18 million almond trees down the valley. So these are public trust resources, the water and the salmon, and you own them. The people, the 40 million people in California own the fish, they own the water, and we can figure this thing out. I mean, there was a lot of fish when I started fishing. There was a lot of boats. and they're not anymore. But it was a good living, and I appreciate these guys getting us disaster money quickly. That'll really, really help. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Andy Giuliano. I own Fish Emeryville, which is a charter boat landing in the East Bay. We've been in business since 1972, continuously for 51 years. Annually, we carry approximately 20,000 people, passengers, out into the ocean to fish for a variety of fish. But there's no doubt that king salmon is the dominant fish and represents about 40% of our annual income. The loss of the 2023 salmon season will be devastating to boat owners, to crew members, and to their families. Much like COVID, there will not be people who make it to the end of this disaster. Our industry will be stress tested again, and as I said, it's not likely that many will make it out of it. In some cases, we're a throwback industry. We don't have any aspirations to work from home. Remote working means traveling up and down the coast looking for salmon and for crab. The apps on our phones are weather, forecasts, buoy reports, and tides and currents. However, we're the epitome of California small businesses. We live locally, we buy locally, and we spend locally. We thank you for your time.
That's okay.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for having me, Congressman Huffman. It's an honor. I'm Kenny Belov. I am the co-owner of 2x Wholesale Company here behind me at Pier 45 and Fish Restaurant over in Sausalito across the bay. Let's see. The loss of 2023 salmon season is going to be devastating. It's going to be painful financially. And as a culinary professional, as a fish buyer, and as a fishmonger, it's going to be hard to recover from the loss of that single species. We have a saying in our business that seafood without a story is flavorless. And that flavor comes from the people that bring us the local fish that we can serve. The party boat and the sport boat captains that take us out to create memories that will last a lifetime. Without those individuals, we serve flavorless seafood, and I refuse to serve flavorless seafood. So as we all sit here together, and thank you all for bearing the weather, and for those of you watching at home, we use the word pivot a lot over the last 3 years. We've done a lot of pivoting. And all of us here and all of us at home are consumers. We will all dine out. We will all buy ingredients to cook at home. We will all celebrate with food. And the number one thing that we can all do is to support the fleet in whatever opportunity they might have in this coming up year. They will pivot to local halibut. They will pivot to black cod. They will pivot to white sea bass. They will pivot to albacore tuna. And when we all go out and dine, when we all go out and shop, I beg of you, demand locally caught seafood while we wait for salmon to recover. And we thank everyone behind me who can give us a chance to make it through this next year. We can still do so much when we go out as consumers and demand that what these folks are catching behind me, that they still have a fighting chance to continue for generations to come. Thank you all for your time. Kenny live from Outdoor Pro Shop will be next.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ken Eli, the owner of Outdoor Pro Shop and 3 other related businesses that all sell salmon gear. Up until recently, I had 39 employees. I am the largest independent fishing tackle dealer west of the Mississippi, but we've already had to lay off 10 people, and probably going to have to lay off more. I can only get down to a certain number because I have a very, very large retail store that if it's not properly covered, I'd get stolen out of business. Salmon sales and related accessories amount to about 40% of our annual sales. There is no way humanly possible to try to make up that number because it's a very large number, in other species. That would make the assumption that we were not already doing a good job for the other species, and that's just not true. So my sales will be down 40% this year. I will lose multiple seven figures. It's already a fact, whether I like it or not. My employees, of the 39 that I had, about half of them have family and dependents that rely on my employees to bring home the paychecks to support them. The salmon season closure doesn't just affect people like me. It affects everybody in the fishing tackle industry through lost sales. There's lost boat sales. People just have no interest in looking at a new boat with the future because maybe I shouldn't say this, but there's been more than enough talk about another closure for next year already. And based upon the drought history, there's a good chance of it. There's lost fuel sales. There's going to be zero non-farmed salmon for anglers, wholesalers. My papers are sticking together. I chose to go off of prepared notes rather than ad lib because they'd be hooking me out of here. If you let me ad lib, I'll go for an hour. Mechanics, hospitality industry, travel industry, automobile and truck sales, commercial anglers and recreation anglers suffering. The list is long and far-reaching. I could go on and on. Outdoor Pro Shop services an average of 48,000 customers over the last 5 years, each year. So if I'm not a barometer for the effects of this, I don't really know who is. Many of these customers, own their own boats, which relies on them. You know, they spend a lot of money. The salmon angler, as a segment of the anglers in the variety of fisheries that we service, are the number one spenders. It's just the way it is. Our customers in Outdoor Pro Shop come to us from hundreds of miles away because they know we are going to have not only the equipment that they need, but the personnel that can help them understand how to use it, where to go, what speed to troll at, etc. You know, I heard it said a couple times already that it's a dreary day and it's raining, and to me, it's a beautiful day because there's water. It's what it's all about. So thank you for hearing me out. And with that, the next speaker is Congressman, sticky notes, Kevin Mullin. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Congressman Kevin Mullin, 15th Congressional District, San Mateo County, and the southeastern portion of San Francisco. Proud to stand with my colleagues. As you've heard from our speakers, salmon are woven into our communities and our lifestyles. They touch all of us, and in my mind, there's no question they are worth saving. Hearing from fishermen, commercial and recreational, restaurant owners, and tackle shop owners really puts a human face on this crisis. I am very glad to see our Secretary Wade Crowfoot here. I take that as reassurance that saving the salmon is a priority for the state of California. I want to reiterate what my friend Congressman Huffman said. We are here to help. We want you to be around for a very long time. We are committed to getting you immediate assistance in the form of disaster relief. And Jared is right. Time is absolutely of the essence. And we need to do a better job of getting disaster relief to you in an expeditious manner. In the long run, we need to do the work to preserve our historic salmon runs and with them, the salmon industry itself. Now, I cannot step away from the mic without saying how excited I am that our next speaker is here, and I will let Congressman Huffman do the honors. Thank you all.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, Congressman Mullin. And just as the rain picks up, we get to the most important part of all. It is an incredible honor for me to introduce our final speaker. You know, 100 years from now, you'll read in the history books about the incredible contributions of Speaker Nancy Pelosi. She is a global figure. She is a historic figure. But she also represents this port of San Francisco and this salmon fleet right here in San Francisco. That's the part that matters most today. And I just want to tell you, as someone who has served with her for a few years and been in the trenches with her, as difficult as it has been for this salmon community, it could have been a lot worse. There have been many times when Speaker Nancy Pelosi had your back and you didn't even know it. I worked with her to fend off some really bad threats that might have put an end to our California salmon, and every single time she came through. She has just been a true champion for this community. We're so honored to have her here today. Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jared. Jared says that because I always do exactly what he instructs us to do. So it looks very wise to him. Thank you all. Thank you so much, Wade, for being here and talking about the governor and lieutenant governor actually issued the request yesterday for the disaster assistance, which we must have. So to Gavin Newsom, to Lieutenant Governor Sokolos Koulonakis, we thank them for that, but we have to get the money. So we're here. Wade made the commitment. He talked to put us in perspective with all of that. Thank you so much. It's my honor to be here with Kevin Mullin, our new member from San Francisco, whom I'm proud to share the representation of San Francisco with. We take our lead on all of this from Jared Huffman because he just is immersed in this issue. Every time something comes up, we'll say, what does Jared think? Or more importantly, hightail it to wherever Jared is on the floor and say, how can we make the most of the opportunity that is there? So when we talk about hundreds of millions of dollars in the appropriations bill or hundreds of millions of dollars in the COVID bill, 300 million that came through, it was because of his describing the need. We always want more. Andy and Larry and was it Ken or Tim? Where is he? Brother. Ken. It's Ken. Okay, Ken. I didn't know which brother it was here today. And it's my son. Oh, it's your son. Okay, it was a family affair. Kenny and Andy and John and Sarah have given us the stories which are so compelling about what this means to people in terms of livelihood, if we're talking about jobs, in terms of the tribes, what it means culturally, as you said, and also what it means in terms of jobs and food and sustenance and the rest. But this is not for us an issue. For us, this is a value. We've been taught over the years by Zeke Rader, and every time I mention his name, I fill up with tears because he was such a champion to us, and I had the honor of speaking at his service where so many fishermen, fisherwomen, fisher people showed up. So let's put this in a little larger perspective. Kenny and all of you have given us the flavor of it all, and that's a beautiful thing that we will maybe attribute to you or just maybe claim as our own as we talk about it to our colleagues. But we're talking about, as Sarah said, for millions of years the salmon have survived. They are resourceful, and they can accommodate challenges of the environment. But it's when human intervention of whatever structures and the rest that make it just impossible that this becomes exacerbated as a problem. So we have to, as Wade mentioned and others did, and of course Jared, that we have to make sure that the policies and the practices and the rest are not such that they are defying even the evolutionary progress of salmon. But that's really what it is. They resilient in terms of nature's challenges, but not of human challenges that are there. The other thing is the climate issue. It is a big deal. the drought, all these things that are happening have an impact on this. But we can't just think long-term and figure, we have to think long-term and short-term on this. So again, let us appreciate the leadership that Jared Huffman brings to this. He has been a champion working with Anna Eshoo and Mike Tom, all of us who share part of the coast, but he's our guy. Whether it's climate, whether it's fish, salmon, anything that has to do with water, Jared, and beyond that as well, but Jared is there. And I thank everyone for their mention of the tribes and what it means to them culturally, as well as sustenance-wise, as well as economically. But this is a big economic issue. So let me just say this. When this, in 08, around 08, when this happened before, money came at the disaster assistance. We want it to come faster. We think the price tag's about $450 million. Under, was it Magnuson and Stevens from Alaska, it facilitated this kind of transfer of resources, but we want it to be done faster. And that is our mission and our promise to you here. But we thank you for what you are to our environment, to our economy, to our society, to our culture, and what you mean to the salmon. Let's see if we just can't get through this in a way that is a model for us here, for the future, and for the country. And thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts with you today. Thank you.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you, Speaker Pelosi, and thanks to all of you for being here. I think individually we'll make ourselves available to answer questions from the press, but that is the end of the program. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Oh, that was so beautiful.